I'd like to call to order the Hatfield Township Board of Commissioners regular meeting for October 24th, 2018. Roll call.
President Zipfel.
Here.
Vice President Hughes.
Here.
Commissioner Andrus.
Here.
Commissioner Rogers.
Here.
Commissioner Thomas.
Here.
We have a very special guest tonight that we are going to give an award to and recognize in a few moments, but I'd like to lead off if Senator Stuart Greenleaf would lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, before we get to our special recognition item and then our public hearing, we have a couple of housekeeping items. So is there a motion for approval of tonight's agenda?
So moved.
Motion by Commissioner Rogers. Second by Commissioner Thomas. All in favor of approving the agenda that is on the board, and also before you say aye? Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, we can move forward with that agenda. Consent items. Is there a motion to move into the record the consent items listed in your agenda?
So moved.
Motion by Commissioner Thomas.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Rogers. Those items include the Board of Commissioners regular meeting minutes of September 26, the Board of Commissioners workshop meeting minutes of October 10, the Treasurer's report for the month of October, the bills payable, paid bills in the amount of $252,216.74, and unpaid bills in the amount of $481,958.95. With that, I'll call the question. All in favor of moving those into the record, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, those are moved into the record. All right, citizens' comments. Any citizens' comments on agenda items? All right, seeing none, then we are going to begin with our recognition of State Senator Stuart Greenleaf. Senator, if you would join me over at the podium. Okay, for those of you who do not know, I have to give you some sad news. Senator Greenleaf has decided to retire.
Well, that's not, retiring is not in my vocabulary.
Oh, okay.
Running for re-election is in my vocabulary.
I am happy to say I was
40
corrected.
years is long enough, okay?
I agree. I was going to say, I made a note and I said, it is impossible to thank somebody for 40 years of public service. It literally is impossible. For all the wonderful things that he has done for his entire district, in particular Hatfield Township. We have been honored to have you represent us. Over the years, I've gotten to know the senator, and you know, when people speak of him, the 20-plus years that I've lived here, the 10 years that I've been on this board, no one has ever said anything other than wonderful, fantastic things about you, which is a very difficult thing to say in the world today, or to be able to say about someone in the world today. Person after person says that he's done fantastic things for his district. But more importantly, tonight, and I'll read the recognition that we've put together, but more importantly, what I'd like you to remember from us, as behalf of the board and the township, is that person after person describes you as a true gentleman. And I think that that is probably one of the most difficult things to achieve in the profession that you've chosen. And I think it's one of the most wonderful things that people can say about another human being. So we truly appreciate everything you've done, and I agree. You are, without a doubt, a true gentleman, and thank you for your service. So there's no way for me to articulate that in any great formalized fashion, but we do have a proclamation that we are presenting the senator with tonight, and I will read that. I'm happy to read it. It goes as follows. Whereas the Hatfield Township Board of Commissioners hereby recognizes State Senator Stuart Greenleaf for his 40 years of service to the Hatfield community. And whereas Senator Greenleaf was first elected to the House of Representatives in 1976, and whereas Senator Greenleaf was elected to serve the 12th Senate District in 1978, whereas Senator Greenleaf has chaired the Pennsylvania State Judiciary Committee for 30 years, which is a very difficult committee to chair, I know that. As a practicing attorney, I know that. Whereas Senator Greenleaf was the prime sponsor of more than 160 bills signed into law and has passed more legislation than any other member of Pennsylvania's 253-member General Assembly. Whereas Senator Greenleaf is the author of the Clean Indoor Act of 2008, Pennsylvania's Megan's Law, the Grandparent Custody Law, the Rails to Trails Act, as well as many other important pieces of state legislation. Whereas Senator Greenleaf has been an advocate for the residents of Hatfield Township and has helped secure funding for transportation, public safety, and parks and recreation initiatives throughout the community. And now therefore be it proclaimed in accordance with the foregoing that the Board of Commissioners of Hatfield Township does hereby endorse this proclamation as recognition to State Senator Stuart Greenleaf for his commitment and dedication to Hatfield Township, proclaimed and presented this 24th day of October 2018. Senator, on behalf of the entire township for 40 years, we thank you.
Well, thank you very much, and it's been. But let me straighten straighten this out. I'm just your representative. You gave me. It's been a privilege and an honor to represent you in the state senate. I've tried to do it honestly and tenaciously. I don't have a lot of good qualities, but one quality I do have is I'm relentless and I try to and perseverance. I try to represent you in a way that would benefit your constituency. I was a township commissioner in Upper Moreland Township, and it was a wonderful job. I mean, you could actually get something done really quick and fast, and Hatfield Township has done that. I can't think of anything better to do. And you say, well, why are you not running for re-election? Well, because I think you also have to recognize that that you can accomplish what you can accomplish and then move on to something else. And I think it's important for me to. 40 years is a long time, and we should give other people the opportunity to serve you as well. As I said, it's been an honor and a privilege to be here and to represent you, to participate in projects that you had over the years, and to advocate for those projects in Harrisburg, and to make the community a better place. And you have done that, but I'm only one person that was involved in that process. You were the ones that came up with the ideas. You were the ones that had the projects. You're the one that did the engineering work and all the other decisions that you had to make. All I did was to help you and put you and my constituents first. So it's my privilege and an honor. I can't tell you how much I enjoyed the job and that I do in Harrisburg, and enjoy representing you and helping you to accomplish what you want to accomplish here in the township. So thank you so much, and God bless you. Thank you.
Okay. We're going to move right on to really our singular item for our agenda tonight, which is a public hearing on the Pulte Homes Balm Farm for 40-foot road to propose zoning map and text amendment. And I believe I'm handing off the ball to my solicitor. Yes?
Thank you, Mr. President. A motion's in order to suspend the meeting and open the hearing.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, everyone. Tonight, we are considering a hearing on two ordinances. One is 681, and the second is 682. These two ordinances work in concert. Ordinance 681 is an amendment to the MFE Multifamily Elderly District. What it does is provides for an age-restricted housing community. And 682 rezones what we all know as the Balm Tract. It's consistent of two parcels of land, one that's zoned industrial and the other is zoned RA1. So Pulte is the applicant. They're represented by counsel, Mr. Cools, I see in the audience. They have presented these ordinances to us with an application for your consideration. I can tell the commissioners that staff and the consultants have sat down with these ordinances and we have fine-tuned them before they went to both the Township Planning Commission and the County Planning Commission. We added some further restraints on subjects like open space, extra off-street parking, trails, connectivity, separation of buildings, and buffers along the perimeter. So that's all in this version that has been advertised this evening. It has been properly advertised. The property has been posted. It's been sent to the law library and to the newspaper. The Township Planning Commission and the Montgomery County Planning Commission have both reviewed the ordinances. They have provided comments. I'm sure Mr. Cools is going to touch on that. And I want to let everyone know that this is not a formal hearing. There is no record being made. There's no stenographer. There's no burden of proof. There's no parties. It's more like a conversation. The applicant's going to describe what they think is best for this property. The consultants may weigh in, you may have questions, and then we take public comment from the residents to see what they have to say about this proposed use. The applicant will show you a plan. I can let you know that it's a schematic at best. This property is, or what's in front of the board is not the consideration of a plan in general. It's basically whether or not you think the MF3 as amended makes sense for this property as opposed to the RA1 and the LI districts. When and if the board does consider this to be a good idea for the township and these ordinances are adopted, the applicant will then go through a very long and arduous process called the subdivision and land development process. That is the actual engineering that is done that does actually result in a plan for the property. It's the layout of the units, it's the ingress and egress, the landscaping, stormwater management, public sewer, public water. Permits are necessary from PennDOT, from the county. There's a NPDES permit, which is a very strict permit regulated by DEP and administered by the Montgomery County Conservation District, having to do with stormwater management. So there's a whole separate process that would go on outside of this. That's not what we're doing tonight. Tonight is just whether or not this new ordinance with the age restricted makes sense for this property. That process is reviewed by the township consultants, including the township engineer, those outside agencies. That subdivision and land development plan would be reviewed by the Planning Commission and then come back here in front of the commissioners. So that's a very important process. The real meats and potatoes of how this land would be developed is not what we're doing tonight, just to be clear. So, and when we get to the public comment, if there's somebody who speaks for a group, feel free to indicate that. People can raise hands. We really just need the board to have a sense of what people think. We don't need repetitive comments. We like to be efficient here, so if you could proceed in that fashion, we would appreciate that. So with those comments, I see Mr. Cools is in the audience. It would be appropriate for him to come forward and present his application.
Thanks very much, Ms. Pianzio, members of the board. Joe Cools on behalf of Pulte Homes, and as was stated, Pulte is proposing the rezone of the Balm Tract. The property is approximately 100 acres in area, and as also was mentioned, thank you. Thank you. The applicant is proposing two ordinances. One effectuates a map change, and the other effectuates some text modifications in the MFE to accommodate the project which is being proposed. As was also stated, this hearing this evening is a hearing which is required under the Pennsylvania Municipalities Planning Code. It's defined as a public hearing, and it's really designed to give the community an opportunity to be heard, frankly, more than us to be heard yet again. We've been involved in this project for quite a while now, and members of the Board of Commissioners and the public have heard this proposal a number of times. Let me just give you a brief outline of that quickly, if I may. We first began by some initial conversations with staff well over a year and a half ago, and on September 25 of 2017, we went to your Planning and Zoning Committee for the first time, which was a public meeting. And just after that, on October 3rd of 2017, we reached out to some community leaders in the MacArthur Drive area and the Leon Drive area and asked them to help us organize a larger neighbors meeting, which we accomplished for the first time on January 17 of 2018. We sent out mailers to homes well beyond the 500 feet required by your local ordinance. I think we contacted well over 100 families, and we met over here in the community room. That meeting occurred on January 17 of 2018, the first of those meetings. We then made application to the township on May 12 of 2018, went back to the Planning and Zoning Committee for a second time on May 21st, and then we appeared before this board, the Board of Commissioners, on August 22nd of this year to acquaint them again with the project, and obviously that was also a public meeting. We had a number of you folks out here that evening also. We then went to your Planning Commission on September 18, where we were fortunate enough to receive a unanimous recommendation for approval from your local Hatfield Township Planning Commission. And then, as was promised to this board when we appeared in August, we had another neighbors meeting where we sent out the same level of mailings to those individuals over 500 feet, again about 100 families, and we met again on September 19th back here in the community room with neighbors to again hear what their interests were and to explain the project again, which really hadn't changed much over the course of the past year, which brings us here this evening on October 24th. Now, as I said, or as I started by saying, this is really an opportunity for the public to be heard and for the commissioners to hear your interests in the parcel and your concerns if you have any. But we do need to describe the project a little bit, obviously. So we brought with us this evening Mr. Holmes from Pulte Homes, and we have with us Mr. John Kennedy, who's our land planner, who you all know. We have Pete Spizak from Traffic Planning and Design, our traffic engineer, and we have with us Mr. George Hartman from Bowler Engineering. Frankly, in the course of our presentation, we're prepared to put on Mr. Kennedy to have him describe the planning aspects and the site plan briefly, and then Mr. Holmes can again describe for you who Pulte is, what their projects consist of, and what the community will look like from an architectural perspective and a design perspective. Before I turn it over to them, though, I will tell you that in addition to what you have from us this evening, you're also in receipt of a number of different reports that are typically part of this process. In fact, I think they're required by your ordinance. You have, in addition to the local Planning Commission minutes of the meeting which I described to you where they unanimously recommended approval, you also have a County Planning Commission letter dated October 8. You have an environmental impact report that was generated by our land planner, Mr. Kennedy, dated October 18. You have a fiscal impact analysis, which was prepared by David Babbitt, and you also have a transportation impact assessment dated October 24th, which was prepared by Traffic Planning and Design. Those items are here in the Township building, and we are prepared to respond to any questions that may be generated from those documents over the course of time between now and whenever this board may act on this proposal. We're not going to take you through those documents page by page this evening, but if I may, I would like to hand out to you just a abbreviated exhibit packet that I can describe to you real quickly that may help you walk through the rest of the information we have. Real quickly, it may help as you move through the rest of the information that's being presented. At tab A, you have a aerial, which I think you've seen before, which shows essentially the existing conditions, the site, and some of the surrounding area. As tab B, you have a real clear indication of the property, which is shown, the perimeter of which is shown in a bold line, and you see how it's currently split zoned between LI and RA1. At tab C, you have a concept plan. As Ms. Pianzio stated, it depicts what some potential yield might be based on the proposed rezoning, but it is certainly not an engineered plan. And at tab D, you have some of the fiscal impact information which we showed you previously, which shows a net increase in revenue to the township of a little over $250,000 a year, and a net increase in revenue to the school district in over $3 million a year.
Joe, just to clarify, you also be showing these exhibits on the projector so the residents will be
Yes.
able to see? 'Cause
Yeah,
I
there's
see
nothing that I'm describing here right now, folks, that you're not going to see as part of the PowerPoint presentation.
Thank you.
It's just an effort to give it to the commissioners so they actually have it in their hands. And then the last item is a traffic impact differentiation between the RA1 and the property if rezoned. And then the last item is the Planning Commission minutes, which I mentioned to you. Let me just go through a number of other quick points I really want folks to stay focused on and highlight to you again before we turn it over to Mr. Kennedy. One is the item which we talked about a number of times, which is the dedication of open space. As part of this project, the applicant is proposing the dedication of an area in excess of 10 acres, probably in the vicinity of between 12 and 13 acres of abutting open space. It is open space dedication which is being made above and beyond the 25% requirement for open space, which is set forth in your ordinance. And it is an open space offer that is being made that will not in any way assist the applicant in developing the remainder of the property. In other words, we can't use that area in any of the denominators for building coverage calculations or impervious calculations. It's just an out-and-out dedication of in excess of 10 acres of what I assume will eventually be parkland to the township. The fiscal impact we talked about, and the only other item I want to mention to you is density, because obviously density arises as an issue of interest in any project of this scope. And I think there would obviously be some questions about how this density compares to the density of other age-restricted communities in your township. And with the assistance of staff, we were able to work out some of those numbers. And you'll note that the ordinance we're proposing sets forth a density calculation not to exceed 4.25 or 4.25 units per acre. The concept plan, which we've shown, actually depicts 3.9 units per acre. It's typical that a development will actually yield less than what the ordinance might permit, because once you start formally engineering a site and adding in stormwater controls and other restrictions on the property, essentially density drops, it diminishes. So although we are allowed 4.25 under your ordinance, the concept plan itself only shows 3.9. And the way that compares to some of the other communities in your township is that Hidden Meadows comes in slightly over 3.9 units per acre. That's the one that's closest. Tarrington Village is about 4.6 units per acre. Arbor Green is 5.5 units per acre. Wyndham Woods is 6.1 units per acre. And they're all age-restricted communities, and they're all above the density which is being proposed as a part of this project. In fact, your Arbor's project, which is not an age-restricted community, it's a strictly at-market community, is at about 7 units per acre. I should also point out to you that in reference to those age-restricted communities I listed, they're fine communities, and they will not have the level of amenities that are being proposed as part of this community. I should also point out to you that those communities were allowed, at the time they developed, 8 units per acre. So it's a real good example of what I'm trying to describe for you, in that the actual development occurs at something less typically than what is proposed or permitted under the ordinance. Once again, our ordinance sets a max at 4.25 units per acre, and the concept plan shows 3.9. So that's all I have in terms of preliminaries and outlining this for you. Does anyone have any questions for me at this point before I turn it over to Mr. Kennedy to describe the plan? I should point out one thing in reference to the traffic calculation also, and Commissioner Hughes mentioned this last time we were here. You have a traffic comparison being made, and the traffic comparison being made is a comparison being made between an RA1 development and a development as proposed, or a development pursuant to the proposed zoning. What you see on the chart is a comparison of the peak PM hour. That's obviously the time that the roadway is probably under its maximum level of stress. That's the point in time where you calculate your traffic impact fee. When you actually take this project out through the entire day, the differentiation becomes much less. It's still slightly greater developed as RA1, but the differentiation is not as great as it is at the peak hour. But again, your traffic impact fee is calculated at the peak hour because that's the time, that's the level of traffic that the roadway needs to be designed for. I should also mention to you that the traffic impact fee related to this proposal probably results somewhere in the area of about $250,000 in traffic impact fee. So unless you have any questions for me at this time, oh, one other thing before I turn it over. Commissioner Rogers, you expressed some concern or some interest in the open space and the offer that was being made. I can tell you that we are continuing in our efforts to acquire as much of that property as possible. We're working with staff and on our own to offer as part of this project as large a dedication and as contiguous a dedication as possible by the time we get there. Any questions for me? Mr. Kennedy?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is John Kennedy, Principal Kennedy Associates Planners and Land Use Consultants. I know that you have seen this development at least a couple times, but I just want to briefly go through this for any members of the audience who may not be familiar with it. What we have here is the property outlined in blue. This is 40-foot road. And this is Welsh Road right here on the bottom. For reference, this is Lowe's. This is the Ralph's Corner Shopping Center. The site itself is a little bit over 96 acres. And here off to the side is a piece of existing Hatfield Township open space. And then right down here in the dotted blue line is the open space that Mr. Cools was just referring to, the additional open space that would be offered in dedication. What we have here is the proposed plan, the latest plan. What we have is a combination of 3 different dwelling types, which are permitted under the proposed ordinance. It would be a combination of single-family detached lots. The sizes of these lots are a little bit over 6,800 feet. They're 55 feet wide. We also have twin homes and then townhomes, 2 different types. And basically what we're trying to do is to locate the single-family homes up at the top of the site adjacent to the MacArthur Road and the Leon Drive neighborhoods. And then we would locate the townhomes at the bottom adjacent to the shopping center. This is the back of Kohl's right here. And then in the center, we have a combination of twins and townhouses as a transition. There would be 2 access points coming in off of 40-foot road. One, the main entrance would be aligning with Clemens Road right here, and it would be a boulevard going all the way back through the site to an amenity area. And then the second entrance would be down here on the southern portion of the site, aligning with the existing entrance to the Lowe's Shopping Center. And those of you who are familiar with this, this intersection right here already has a light. The lower intersection here, so in other words, this can have full function. This will probably have some type of limited function, and that is contained in the traffic report. For instance, it could be right in, right out, or a controlled left turn. We have, what you're seeing here is a total of 375 units. There's approximately 1/3 of them are single-family detached homes. The open space that is permitted under or required under the ordinance is 25%, and what we're seeing here is a little bit more than that. It's 29%, and that does not include any of the stormwater facilities that are on the site, and it also does not include any of this land which make up the so-called movie lots. That is completely separate from anything that was used to calculate density or coverage or anything in that nature. I do want to real briefly just clarify one item that Mr. Cools had made. The ordinance does have a maximum proposed density of 4.25 units per acre. As I'm sure you know, in Hatfield Township, you calculate that based on what is called developable acreage. So it's not really based on the total property area of the 96 acres. Some land has to be netted out, such as easements or wetlands or floodplains and such. We do have, obviously, an easement. We have the gas easement, which I'm sure you're all familiar with. There is also one very small easement down here. And then we have 3 very small areas of wetlands. So on the 96 acres, there actually is about 90.7 acres of developable acreage. So that's actually what the density is based on. This is structured exactly the same way as the rest of your ordinance. Everything is calculated on developable acreage. We still do not meet the 4.25 units per acre. Based on the developable acreage, we actually have a density of 4.1. So we're still lower than the maximum. Just to real briefly go through, I'm not going to go through this in detail, but what is being proposed here this evening, as was stated, is a rezoning to the MFE multifamily elderly district. And then there's also an amendment, a text amendment that is proposed to that existing district. And basically what we have done is we've kept the MFE district completely intact. We've simply added one more development option to it, and that would be for an active adult community. And this is an active adult community. It's very typical of many of these types of communities that we design all over. We've recently worked on them in several locations in the Delaware Valley, for instance, up in Horsham Township and in Limerick Township. We just completed 2 of these. A local one around here, which I know Mr. Holmes will mention, that is also a Pulte development, is the Reserve at Gwynedd, which is off of Morris Road. So it's actually very, very similar to that, although it's a little bit less dense than that community. That's at about, I believe, 4.8 units per acre. So that's the actual mechanism that's being used to implement the plan. And this plan that you see is prepared in concert with those proposed regulations. I guess, do you want to start to go through this, Rob? This is, Rob will give you a little bit of a background on Pulte Homes, both the developments that they do and also what is proposed here in Hatfield too.
Good evening. Rob Holmes, Vice President with Pulte. Again, we're based locally in Trevose, Pennsylvania and Basking Ridge. Pulte, as many of you know, is a national public home building company. We are strictly a for-sale housing company. This project, active adult community, we are one of the premier active adult builders in the country with our Del Webb brand. So I'm going to walk you through some some of the rationale for the project and why we think it makes sense, and show you a few other slides of our product. So again, we're the most experienced, well-recognized active adult builder in the country. This plan is developed in concert with our experts in active adult housing. We really have refined it, and we're looking forward, if we were to be approved, to get into the engineering of this project. Our community, as I had mentioned previously, it's our goal to make our neighborhood an asset to your overall community. We want this to be a community that is well regarded within the township, and also that offers additional lifestyle options for the existing residents within Hatfield Township, and also the aging population within the local Montgomery County region. Some of the benefits that we've talked about and touched on this evening is the fiscal benefits of the project, the reduced traffic for this project, open space, the trails and connectivity, and again, the option for the aging population in the area to have housing that fits a lifestyle that's commensurate with their age, and also supports the local economy and local retail. To that end, I have reached out and would imagine we'll be engaging in the near future with the Ralph's Corner folks about potential pedestrian connections to their property. I've sent them our plan, and they're going to consider options for connections there. And then we also obviously would create a connection along a 40-foot road, and then there would be a connection to Hatfield Point across the street through what I would imagine would be a pedestrian crossway on 40-foot road. And here's the fiscal slide that's part of the package, and for the residents, you can see the benefit to the school district in excess of $3 million, because the community would be age restricted. There's no school-age children in the community. Benefit to the township of over $250,000, as Mr. Cools pointed out. Again, I should say there's a full report that supports all this information. Traffic impact, again, what we did was we cascaded the RA1 zone over the entire property. So we put the RA1 zoning on the industrial portion of the property, assessed what density might be generated there, and used that as a basis of comparison for traffic purposes. And what you see here before you is a comparison of the AM peak and the PM peak under that scenario. You can see there's a reduction of 30% in the AM and about 38% in the PM. And again, there's a full-blown traffic report that's been submitted. Here's some of the product. As you can imagine, Pulte, we build active adult housing across the country. Our product goes through a thorough review with consumer focus in mind. Our organization has a 12-step process that from inception to completion, where our plans are generated with the consumers in mind. They're constantly being refined based on the current desires of the buying community. So we really, while we take a tremendous amount of pride in the communities that we develop, we also take an extreme amount of pride in the products that we offer. So I'm going to show you just a few photos and elevations. This is one of our single-family homes that is proposed here in the community to give you a sense of what the elevations might look like. Here's an elevation of a model park of our attached product, our townhouse product. This would be one of the townhome buildings I think John had described to you before, that we have twins, townhomes, and single families proposed in the community. Here's a photo of the kitchen and gathering and living area in one of the homes. This is actually from a community that we've just opened in Raritan Township, which is just outside of Flemington in New Jersey, where we're building an active adult community. There's a photo of one of the bedrooms and kitchen areas. And again, a photo of the gathering kitchen area, dining area in that community in Flemington again, which is our most recent community in the geography here. This is an example of the entry features, like a long 40-foot road. Being that the community's active adult, we really want to establish a well-landscaped presence along 40-foot road. There will be a meandering pathway along 40-foot road for connectivity, but an important element of that 40-foot road is going to be not just the landscaping, but monumentation to let people have a sense of place for the community. So this is an example of an entry monument from our River Point community, which is a Del Webb community in Manchester, New Jersey. Here's an example of the clubhouse elevation. This is actually a rendered elevation of the clubhouse we're building in Flemington. The community here, as John pointed out, would have a clubhouse of approximately 10,000 square feet. The clubhouses, again, we treat them like our homes. They're part of the lifestyle of the community. There's a lot that goes on in the clubhouses, and we take a tremendous amount of pride in making sure that the offering, the layout of the floor plans of our clubhouses are in line with what the consumers are looking for. An example of the pool, an outdoor pool, shade structures, like some example of the amenities that bocce, tennis, pickleball is something we have planned for the community. So in addition to the trails and the indoor clubhouse areas for fitness, there will also be, trails and opportunities for pickleball and bocce and tennis. This is an example of a pocket park that we took from the reserve at Gwynedd, which is close to home here. Just of an example of how we would complete a pocket park in the community. There's a lot of green spaces, as John pointed out, in the site plan right now, where we intend to have a lot of small pockets or green areas. This is an example of the streetscape. Again, this is taken from reserve at Gwynedd, just to give you a sense for when the community matures, what it might look like. That's about it. And if you have any questions for me.
Holmes, the reserve at Gwynedd is a gated community. Is that what you would have proposed for this one as well?
Yes, we would propose this to be a gated community. It would likely be an unmanned guardhouse, but it would be gated access for the residents.
I have a couple of quick questions.
Yes.
Because I know that you've met with the neighbors in MacArthur and Leon areas.
Yes.
For clarification, the expectation is that if this is rezoned and construction takes place, that there is not going to be any access into or out of MacArthur's neighborhood or Leon Drive's neighborhood, that this is gated in the sense that it will be separate and apart from those two neighborhoods.
That's correct. Just one other point of clarification, as we get in, if we're fortunate enough to get into the land development process and there's a need to provide for emergency connectivity, that's obviously something that is paramount and we would provide for.
Is there any expectation or understanding of where any safety access might need to be located as a part of the plan? Is that something that's been considered?
Sure. Thanks, John.
We have the ability right here to connect.
John, can you use the mic, please?
We have the ability to have a connection up here to Penfield. We also could obviously reconfigure and, for instance, have an emergency connection into MacArthur Drive. In that sense, we would be willing to accommodate whatever it is that the fire chief or police chief, whatever the EMS staff members would require.
Say one other thing on that point. We have a review, I think, from your emergency services coordinator. I believe what the review says is that he's looking for an emergency access at either of those locations, one or the other. I should also point out to you that what's meant by emergency access is not a typical roadway. It would probably be something in the realm of a half curb and stabilized turf, so that you wouldn't even see it to be a roadway unless you were an emergency service provider who was able to break through that area. And I should also point out to you that there's been discussion that the Penfield location is probably the preferable location because it provides greater access in the event of some kind of emergency, rather than only allowing access into an area like MacArthur Drive, which might also be trapped. Penfield, I believe, comes out to Coffle in a much easier access route than the MacArthur Drive point would.
Yes, sir.
Have to have him on mic.
Norm, can
Can I suggest that the commissioners be done with your questions, and then we'll see if anybody in the audience has questions or comments? If we could stay with that order, that makes it a little easier.
Just a couple other, Norm, and then what we'll do is we'll have you go up to the podium in a minute.
You have to use the microphone.
So I know that there was a great deal of conversation with the neighbors in MacArthur Drive about access, the difficulty that they currently have, and the, I guess, continued concern that they would have with the development next door. Has there been any developments, any other ideas as to how to assist them in alleviating that stress on that access or that intersection?
I think it would be best if our traffic consultant spoke to that. I know we're working through the process to try to clear some trees that are in the right-of-way to open up some visibility. We've cleared some, and we're coordinating with the local police department to get some traffic control so we can do some additional clearing to create greater sight distance. But beyond that, I think it'd be best if our traffic expert answered that question.
Thank you for moving those trees, because I know that you were going
Yes.
to work on that.
Yes.
One last question before you hand it over, because
Sure.
then, rather than having you bounce back
Thanks.
and forth.
Thank you.
If this were to come to be, what is the expected time frame of construction?
Likely a 6-year build-out from the time that we would secure all the approvals. Likely would be 6 years to build the project out.
And then when would you think ground would be broken? When would it start?
Ground would be broken, assuming a 24 to 30 month approval process. Let's assume for conversations it's 24 months. Ground would be broken in, I guess that would be the spring of 2021.
Okay, all right, thank you. I'm giving you the toughest question of everyone, because
Yeah,
I
well-
know that this is the most difficult question right there.
Yeah, so
And
I'm
it's an existing problem.
Yeah,
so
I agree.
I get that, I understand.
And we went out there previously to take a look at, basically what the issues were, and I think one of the biggest issues was that brush. That was, to look, if you're coming out off MacArthur Road and you're looking to the right, MacArthur Drive, sorry, I get road and drive mixed up all the time. Right, you're looking to the left.
Yep,
There's a big grouping of trees
there is.
that blocks your
Just
sight
past the
distance.
lane cutout.
Yep,
You can't
exactly.
see any further down the road.
It's difficult to see further down the road. So we suggested that if you remove that brush, you should have a much better, you're definitely gonna have a much better sight line, and which should hopefully help you to get out quicker and easier than you would if obviously you can't see. Secondly, we based on the results of the traffic study that we prepared, by adding the fourth leg on the Clemens Road with the signal and retiming that signal and then potentially tying the signals together along 40-foot road,
Right.
that should allow for better breaks in traffic for the people on MacArthur to get out.
Okay, so the signaling could assist it, the signaling that we have actually planned, I think, sometime over the next year.
Right, correct.
Isn't it going to create more backup coming down 40-foot road from the borough, which would make it,
The results of our traffic study didn't show really any kind of increase in queuing along 40-foot road. With the retiming of the signals that we provide with the additional, with the improvements, and then we're also providing some turn lanes to get in and out of the sites. So there wasn't really, based on the results of the traffic study, there really wasn't any.
But here again, you're still dealing with peak hours.
Peak hours, correct. And that's a PennDOT guideline. I mean,
But
it's
if you
basically,
drive around here, if you run on Cowpath on the weekends, the backups there are just as huge as during the week. So now, if you're gonna add, 300 houses there, you're gonna have some more backups there on off-peak hours. And if you look in the county's letter, it talks about street connectivity to connect some of the other developments in there. And this is the only chance you're gonna have to be able to get them people out on MacArthur to a signalized intersection. So if you don't do it now, it never will happen. And the other comment I want to, Mr. Kennedy mentioned something about a controlled left at the entrance by Lowe's.
yeah, so basically that intersection, we will be restricted, no lefts out will be allowed from our site, just consistent with the other side of the street. Right now, if you're coming out of the shopping center, you can't make a left out. You have to go up to Clemens to make your left. Here, you would also have to go up to the light at Clemens, the new light, to make the left. So that intersection down there will not be signalized. We'd be providing a left turn lane to get into the site and restricting the left out movement.
Just to point out for, the area of that entrance is approximately where the old Funks Road used to come out. And anybody who's been around here for a while knows that Funks Road was always a bad spot. There were a lot of accidents, and that's why the township worked with Clemens so hard to get Clemens Road built and move Funks Road. So I want to make sure that we're never going to create that situation again in that area. So, I'll be very sensitive if there's going to be left turns in there as to whether it's going to create a problem.
Well, the site distances that are available, it meets the acceptable site distance for, based on PennDOT's criteria for the left in. That and basically because there's two signals on either side and there's another way to get out as far as a left, we restricted the left out just as to be consistent with the other side of the street. So that in itself should help alleviate any safety issues that you may see.
Commissioners, any other questions, comments?
My question is, the fourth leg on Clemens Road there, coming out of that development, would it have a left turn signal?
It probably will not have a left turn signal. It will have a left turn lane. To have a left turn signal, you need to meet certain volume warrants that PennDOT requires you to meet before they allow you to put a left turn signal, like a left turn arrow. And it wouldn't meet those requirements. So
Why wouldn't it?
it doesn't have enough traffic on it.
Come in the opposite direction, correct. I just think about the volume coming down 40-foot road that Commissioner Hughes alluded to.
Any other commissioner comments or questions?
The question on the Baum property report, page 7. Item 2 and 5. Item 2 says stormwater runoff from the site will be reduced from the current pre-development levels. I'm not quite sure what that means. It's going to eventually run off, right? It'll be even too?
It is, but right now it's basically all uncontrolled runoff. You've got large amounts of the.
So you'll be controlling it, not reducing it.
Oh yeah, we will be controlling it, correct.
Okay, and this says reduced.
Well, it actually could be reduced, but it will be controlled, yes, that is correct.
Then item 5, proposed development will not have a negative environmental impact on the site. Doesn't every development have a negative impact? Stays green, right? It's better than developing it, so to speak.
I'm not sure that I would necessarily agree with that statement, but there are always impacts, yes. We're not going to deny that there are no impacts at all, but obviously landowners can develop their property, and I think that...
Not denying that. I'm just suggesting that to say there's not a negative impact, environmental impact, somewhat misleading. Just an observation.
Understood, understood.
Thank you.
Anything else? Okay, this would be the time when the board would consider public comment. If people want to make comments, we have to have you go to the microphone, please, because we are recording and we need to get you on the mic. Please state your name and your address before providing your comment. Thanks.
I'm Norm Blackbro. I live right up in that corner.
You have an address, Norm?
Leon Drive, of course, 1656
Thank you.
Drive. Got a lot of concerns, but two major ones. First one is you were just talking about runoff. Share with you the runoff from that field, and it's not developed. There aren't roofs for houses, and there aren't roadways. So the curiosity for me is, what are you going to do with all that water? Because right now it floods into my yard. Second thing is, which way are you going to take it? Do you have your pointer available?
Norm, could you get closer to the microphone, please? Maybe bend it towards you.
Sure.
Thank you. How about the other way, closer to the microphone?
Just pick the thing up.
You can move it. Turn it towards you. It moves.
The microphone. Yeah.
There you go.
There you go, Norm.
Thank you.
This, right now, the runoff comes down that tree line, runs into my backyard, runs into my neighbor's backyard, and in some cases goes down a little further. The runoff is a ditch. It runs behind my pine trees. And then it makes a turn and it goes down into this field. So the primary concern for me is you start building here, you put all those roofs and everything, which way are you going to go with the water? Are you going to come down here through the woods? I'm sorry. You're going to come down here and bring it out this way? Or are you going to bring it down, take it out Welsh Road? Now, I don't know the topology of the land, so I can't guess where the natural runoff is going to go, but I know where it is now. And it is into this field over here.
So, Norm,
Yes.
as I said in my beginning comments when opening this hearing, stormwater management is probably the most important, other than traffic, probably the most important issue in Hatfield Township because it's so flat. We're used to these conversations. So I'm going to see if the applicant has any idea at this point, but I'm going to suggest that they've not done the engineering necessary to answer your question. So the only thing in front of the board tonight is whether or not this MFE use makes sense for the property. When they get into the subdivision and land development stages where they have to answer those questions, they'll have topography and design so that they can tell you exactly where things are going to go.
That would be nice.
Yeah, it's very important, and it's scrutinized, believe me. The township engineer scrutinizes it, the county does, DEP, and the regulations are very serious and
I'm
very
aware of
tough.
that. But as a resident, I wanted to make sure my concerns
It's
were.
always the forefront of our minds, but
Very
it's just not on the agenda tonight for discussion. Does the
Okay.
applicant have any idea which way things are flowing at this point, or is it premature?
Come see me, I'll show you.
Let's see if they have any idea. It's early.
And the other thing, the other major concern is here.
The
Has
emergency
to do
access?
with construction equipment.
Sorry, say that again.
Construction equipment, diggers and trucks, you know.
Yeah, what about it? Norm, what's your concern about construction
Are
equipment?
they going to bring heavy diggers and trucks right in there through Penfield?
Okay.
Commit, let me grab this. We can commit to not accessing the site even during construction from any points around the surrounding neighborhoods. We'll access the site even during construction through 40-foot road.
Okay.
Okay, and let me just also say in reference to stormwater, obviously all the things you said were true. We don't have any designs yet. We'll be able to tell you some preliminary thoughts, but rate will decrease. You know, the stormwater calculations are typically based on rate and quantity. Rate will decrease, and I believe quantity will decrease somewhat because of all the requirements that our engineers are more familiar with than I am that are heightened just recently in the state of Pennsylvania, which require a lot more percolation on site than they did previously. Why don't you tell us what the initial thoughts are regarding flow?
Sure. Good evening, George Hartman with Bowler Engineering. As noted, we have not fully engineered this plan yet, so I can't necessarily tell you exactly where the stormwater is going to go. Generally speaking, we will have to meet all of the township requirements for stormwater management in addition to the state regulations, which, in a nutshell, don't allow any stormwater greater than what exists on the property today to leave the site once it's developed. We will look at an existing condition to see exactly where is the stormwater going today, and we will, for the most part, match once the site is developed. Wherever the stormwater is going today, it'll probably end up going in the same directions with no increase to rate or volume as exists today. If there are specific areas of concern, as was pointed out, if there's something that we can do to alleviate that, when the time comes, we'll certainly look at that and see what we can do. But for the most part, there will be no increase to the stormwater as a result of this development.
Thank you, George.
George, just so you know, Leon Drive has this problem up and down, top to bottom, regardless of whether it's related to this proposed development. A lot of water comes out into the street, a lot of water goes into backyards. So if this is a proposal that moves forward, and you just said if there is a particular area to be concerned with, that is probably, stormwater-wise, that is the singular biggest area of concern when it comes to stormwater. To the point where on a heavy rain, the streets will literally be flooded. You can't walk along the streetways sometimes. So that, if this is approved, that's going to be your hurdle. That'll be your challenge right there.
I don't know that I can represent that we'll be able to solve that necessarily, but certainly we'll work with Township's consultants to do what we can do.
Sure, no, we understand.
Good evening. My name is Mary Lou Eckerly, and I currently reside at 2303 MacArthur Drive. I don't know, this is not the pointer, but I'm on the corner, that first corner above, yep, right there, actually across the street. I've lived here 23 years, and I've raised my sons here. My late husband and I moved here in 1996, and we love Hatfield Township. We love this development. My biggest concern is we have one single entry, and Tom, I thank you for bringing up our concerns for our transportation tonight, because that's why I'm here. We have one single entry into the MacArthur Drive development, and I really wish that the transportation presentation that was presented tonight, to my understanding, is from studies that have been done by PennDOT, but not actual transportation results from our streets that are coming out of here. And I would really like to see recordings to actually analyze the number of traffic patterns that are coming in and out of MacArthur Drive, because the last time we were here, to our knowledge, this was from PennDOT studies, not actual recordings. So this morning, it took me 15 minutes to get out of my development, and that was at 10 of 8. And I will tell you, it's not the nighttime that it's the problem, it's the morning. And I can speak from experience. And I really wish someone would take some studies during those morning times and really understand, because you cannot make a left onto 40-foot road from MacArthur Drive. So that's why I'm here. I am very concerned as a resident to make sure that we can adequately get out safely out of our development, because I don't think with this added, and Pulte, I think it's a wonderful development. I think it would be an added value to Hatfield. I think it's wonderful, but I really don't think the traffic has been completely analyzed properly to really identify the traffic patterns that need to be identified, especially for MacArthur Drive. So that's my point. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you. Does anyone want to comment on that from the applicant's perspective? Because that is an issue that came up at our meeting in September when we met with predominantly MacArthur Drive and some Leon Drive residents.
So we did actual counts at MacArthur and 40-foot. We did actual counts basically at every intersection, well, from Welsh all the way up to Coffle, including all the intersections along there. We counted during the AM peak and the PM peak from 7 to 9 in the morning and from 4 to 6 in the afternoon. And we have results that are included in the report.
Joe, do we have a copy of the report? We do. We have a slide, but I don't know if we have.
Yeah, you have the full report. It's 200 some pages, Commissioner Zipfel, and we have 15 copies for you that we're going to leave for you.
Okay, great.
And let me just also say, I'm glad that Pete let everybody know that we in fact have done actual counts, but we're in no way trying to refute the fact that there's an issue here. We understand there's an issue here, and we understand it needs to be addressed, and we're prepared to address it. But I just want to make that clear as Pete's speaking, that what Pete's saying is not any effort to deny the fact that there is an issue that needs to be addressed at that location.
Right, right. So this report, basically, the way we analyze the traffic is we go out and we count, physically count the intersections along, in the study intersections along where the site is. And to determine what intersections we need to count, we have to go to the Township and to PennDOT with a scoping application. That's our first step. Our first step is to submit this scoping application to both the Township and PennDOT. PennDOT will review our scoping application. We'll include what intersections we think we need to include in our study, and then they will come back and say, no, include this one or include this one, or they'll come back and say, yes, you're right, and do what you need to do. So basically, PennDOT and the Township both have to approve the scope of the study before we even do anything. Second step is to actually go out and physically count the intersections. Then we add on background growth on top of that. Then we add on any nearby development traffic that may not be open at the time of the counts. Then we add on our site traffic on top of all of that and determine what the impact is. We look at the existing conditions, we look at the future conditions without our site, and then we look at the future conditions with our site. And we determine what the difference is between with our site and without our site, and if we increase the traffic by, or the intersection starts to fail, basically there's a level of service the way we do these analysis, and it's graded based on A being the best and F being the worst. Basically, D would be an acceptable level of service. If we trip any level of service above a D, or if it goes from a C to a D greater than 10 seconds, we have to mitigate our impact. So this report looks at all of those items and intersections and determines what improvements are needed or if any, at the intersection.
So it sounds like we have a copy of the report. It's lengthy. There's a number of copies. Joe, I think you said 15. And we've got copies here at the Township. So residents and obviously commissioners can get together and take a look to just review what you've just described, and in that includes the actual count numbers.
Correct.
I assume you took counts more than just one day. You took it over several days?
We took it on one day.
Okay.
We took it, I can tell you exactly the date. I believe it was...
It wasn't a holiday day.
No. No, if we did it on a holiday...
Was it during the school year?
Yes, it has to be during the school year. So,
I don't need a specific day.
I think it was back in May that we counted.
May of this year.
Yes, correct. We wanted to get it in before the end of school to determine, because we weren't sure when we were going to actually submit the traffic study, so we wanted to get the counts done then, because in case we were going to submit the traffic study over the summer.
Okay.
And I'll just say it again, this is the only chance you have to make a connection from MacArthur Road to the light. If it doesn't happen now, it never will. And I don't know what you're ever going to do to improve people to get in and out of MacArthur. So.
Okay, anyone else have public comment? Commissioners, anything else that you'd like to ask or comment on? Okay, if, Joe, you're done, we can close the hearing.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
Do we want to talk about the process before we close the hearing or after we close it?
Doesn't matter.
Why don't we talk about the process now and then we'll close?
So we've thought that the commissioners would like to take a month, as you usually do,
Right.
between a hearing and a vote. So we have it slotted for November 28th for your consideration and a vote on the ordinances as proposed, not tonight.
Okay, so that makes sense. So what that means to residents that are here and those who end up watching, that means if you have comments, we need to hear them, sooner would be better, but certainly no later than, I'm sorry, what is it, November 28th?
Correct.
When presumably there would be, that's an action night?
It would be an action item for you to consider voting on the applications.
Wait, it's the week after Thanksgiving, right?
Week after, November 22nd is Thanksgiving this year. It's an early one. So we're still 2nd and 4th as scheduled. November.
So commissioners can be reached by way of email, look us up on the website. You can feel free to call or email, whatever's easiest, and we encourage the feedback. Otherwise, sometimes if nobody says anything, we feel like we are making decisions in a vacuum. So if you have something, please pass it on. And you are all encouraged back to every one of our meetings. We desperately try and get people to attend. And feel free to go up to the podium and you can provide us your feedback or ask us questions at the next meeting. It doesn't have to just be by way of email. You can go up to that podium at the very next meeting and say, hey, I have a question about last week's or last meeting's presentation. Can you answer it for us? Or can you get an answer from the applicant for us? So there's a lot of different ways to give us feedback and get additional information for your own peace of mind. And again, November 28th is when it would be an action item. And I guess with that, we'll have a motion to close the hearing. Oh, yes, absolutely. Sure, go right ahead. We're still in the hearing.
Hello, I'm Donna Bushman, and I live at 1648 Leon Drive. So my question is about the traffic study. So was that just like 40-foot road and Welsh Road? Was it the main roads, or did you also, is there like an impact for the surrounding residential roads? Like Coffle Road, Leon Drive, Penfield, Brighton, Coffle, Sourwood, like that
Back there?
surrounding, yeah, because Coffle can be a problem with traffic, and then Elroy, and, I mean, it's not just 40-foot road, Welsh Road, right?
No, so we looked at all these intersections along 40-foot roads. So we looked at Welsh, we looked at the Hatfield Point driveway, we looked at Clemens, we looked at MacArthur, and then we looked at Elroy and Coffle, all along 40-foot road.
Yeah, just all along 40-foot road, but not, it's just like a river where it has the creeks that come all around to it. The creeks are the little roads. And those little roads get affected by people who want to bypass the crowding on Coffle and Elroy, and, people try to cut around wherever the traffic backs up, like your major intersections will back up. So then you've got people who just like to drive instead of sitting, and they meander all around the little side roads, but you don't take that into consideration with your study?
So there's two things. First, obviously the township and PennDOT had looked at this proposed site and looked at the intersections and the impacts of this and determined these were the intersections that we need to count. Thank you. And then second, once you get further north or further south, where vehicles start turning and basically, the majority of the basically 100% of the traffic needs to come along 40-foot road for this proposed site. Once you get up to Elroy and Coffle, then they split off. So, and obviously, you're going to have about, I think our split was about 60% to the south and 40% to the north. So once you get south to Welsh, you're going to have more people split that way, more people split that way, so your impact becomes much less. So basically, if you take 100, say the site generates 100 vehicles, 60 go south, 40% go north. You have 60 vehicles coming south, but then when you get to Welsh, it splits off, and maybe it's 50-50 splits. 30 vehicles and 30 vehicles, and when you have 30 vehicles, it's really not going to impact an intersection level service.
So you're saying that the impact study is done at what is the highest
Correct.
density, volatility, whatever the term is, and what Donna's asking is, has been considered, well, how it affects the other ancillary roads. And so what you're saying is that because of the dissipation of cars going in different directions, it certainly couldn't be in the most troublesome area, the most traffic-filled, given this development. It wanes and dissipates, is what you're saying.
Correct.
But you understand what Donna's saying,
Yeah,
which is there's going to bring, suddenly your villa's going to have, or Coffle will have more drivers on it. Might not be the trip number, Donna, that they say, because I don't think 100% of the people are going to make a right-hand turn out of the facility, go up to Coffle, make a right-hand turn, and go down to Coffle. But Coffle is one of the worst. Coffle and Orvilla is one of the worst intersections in Hatfield Township. We know that. So,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, that's the whole problem with, I mean, I love living here, I do, but it's a nightmare driving. And we all live in this area, we all commute, and pretty much, I'm assuming, but we all do that type of time frame, and you can't get there from here. You know, I mean, it just takes forever. Because everybody, 40-foot road, well, that was just great when they put that extra lane in, but that was like who decided to make it short and then go back, big again? Like, that was ridiculous. But, I mean, it's like you funnel, you kind of get to the main artery, but then everybody's on that main artery. So to get to the main artery, you have the little things, and then the little things, people are meandering all over the place because it's just crazy to drive around here.
I understand where Don's coming from because I've seen that firsthand too, and I live on the other end of the township where a lot of people just try to cut out from Cowpath and Lime Lexington Road, and they'll go through Rebecca Drive and things. So
sure, they just go, you take a path that will, in theory, I think your brain says, well, if I can scoot around here to get out somewhere else that's not jammed as
try to avoid
right?
a light that's backed up.
It may
or
not
something.
be, because if you travel, you could test it, two people do the same thing, right, at the same, and you probably end up at the destination around the same time.
Yeah.
But it's just the distribution of vehicles to, at least that's the appearance of it. It just, you just think you keep moving, but 375 homes, and it looks like a beautiful development. And I'm 55, not as active probably as I should be, and maybe I might buy one. But it's like that's still a lot of cars, because most people have 2 cars. It's just a lot of cars, and I think it's a great idea.
375 homes is 750 cars.
There you go. So yeah, I mean, I'm not saying that I'm against this. It's just I, like anything change, you have to be prudent in making the right decision. But that's my main concern is the Cowpath roads, the 40-foot roads. They just can't handle the traffic that is there now. So I don't know what we do about that, because we're an older section of the United States where we're all established. You'd have to probably condemn half the property to make freeways or whatever, like California or whatever, but that would be horrible too. So I don't know what the answer is, except that being thoughtful for others, and I don't know.
Thank you, Donna.
It would be
Very
nice
likely
to
to
take
do
that
the
into
best
consideration, those smaller roads,
I'm done.
what type of traffic it has.
I'd like to suggest to you that one of the things we might do is take advantage of the opportunity to rezone a property to put significantly fewer cars on the road during the peak hours, which is what we're offering you. What we showed you is a development that puts significantly fewer cars on the road during the 2 peak hours. I mean, the property is what it is. It's currently an undeveloped parcel, and we all know what that means. It's going to develop in some form sometime in the near future. The only question before this board is to how to manage that inevitable growth. And I think we're offering a very good opportunity, and we ask that you consider it. We know you will. Thank you very much.
Okay, if there's nothing else, that motion to close the hearing is in order and resume the meeting.
All right, I'll make the motion. All in favor of closing the public hearing and resuming the regular meeting, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, the public meeting is closed. We're back into our general meeting, and the only remaining item we have is citizens' comments. Any citizens' comments? All right, seeing none, then I will entertain a motion to adjourn, but before I forget, I will reiterate, the documents that we're reviewing, for example, the traffic study and others, are available to us, obviously, also available to residents. Reach out for us if you like, and with that, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn.
Moved.
Motion by Commissioner Rogers, second by Commissioner Thomas. All in favor of adjournment, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, we are adjourned. Thanks for coming out, folks.